what wedding moment made you think they are not going to last long? The bachelor party and the bachelorette party were in Vegas at the same time. Across the hall from each other, the bride and groom got in a huge fight on the last night of the trip, and when I was leaving I said I'll see you guys at the wedding to the groom, and he replied I'm not sure there's gonna be one. There was a wedding, but they were divorced within 18 months I believe. My brother's ex-wife. Throughout the exchange of vows, she was looking at everyone but my brother, making sure all eyes were on her. Later, she instructed the photographer, a family friend who was cheap, to mingle and get shots of people being happy. Within 10 minutes, she'd summoned the photographer back shouting, "Whose wedding is this? I meant get shots of people being happy for me." At my boyfriend's sister's wedding, the groom got drunk before the vows and smoked weed after the vows, was crossfaded as heck, and made a fool of himself. When we went up to congratulate them after, she refused to be near him or take pictures with him. It was awkward. After the speeches basically everyone left. Family was still around, and they opened gifts. Someone gifted nice champagne and the groom tried to open it and dropped it and it shattered. Bride stormed off screaming. Groom got upset and started cussing out the air. They still went to their honeymoon together in Florida, and she got pregnant almost immediately. Maybe 7 months into her pregnancy she kicked him out because he slept with her roommate. They got divorced when their kid was 6 months old. But it's for the best. The dude is a pose and wasted a lot of their money by being selfish on their day. The bride and groom did the first dance, then spent the rest of their reception completely apart from each other, getting shit-faced with their own separate friend groups. The only other dancing all night was the bride dancing with her high school friends. The father-daughter dance and the mother-son dance, during which the groom was crying. The best man's speech didn't mention the bride at all and basically boiled down to groom, "You're married now, but our bond is older and stronger. All of our hunting and fishing trips together are the best thing in our lives. Can't wait for more." Such a sad, desperate atmosphere. They made it a little over 1 year. I used to be a wedding singer and I played a wedding like that once. We had a hard time figuring out who the groom was because he was never anywhere near the bride. The first dance was delayed because the wedding planner had such a hard time getting the two of them in the same place at the same time. Afterwards they both stayed on opposite ends of the ballroom. In the 6 hours of the reception I don't think they ever spoke to one another. After the wedding, my friend's new wife, who was fairly quiet in public, was screaming at my friend's family, telling them it was the last time they would be seeing them and how terrible they were. It was hard to watch. 2 years later, my friend walked in on her and a dude. That was that. Where to start? The best man was the groom's coke dealer, who dressed in a tux, the only one in a tux. The groom was high on coke and giggled throughout the whole ceremony. The host of the party alternated between arguing with his wife in Russian and running up to us every time he saw us, the bride's friends, the only people that showed up from her side for the wedding, whenever he saw us in groups of 2 or more, and tell us don't smoke weed. If his wife won't let me smoke weed in the house, then you guys can't. Every time we grouped up. My husband was the best man at a wedding. The bride was a nightmare, not just during the wedding, but in general everyday life. All of the friends hated her, and she had no friends of her own. We knew it was doomed when during the portraits, the bride was making everyone miserable as can be. The groom said exact words, "I'll just send her to therapy, and if that doesn't work, we can just get divorced." I was kindly included in a last minute +1 to the wedding of a family friend who I'd never met before. At the rehearsal dinner, or the German equivalent, the pole terrible and the guests smashed ceramic and porcelain items on the ground. I was fresh in Germany, so this was all pretty out of context and frightening. But my boyfriend explained that it's a tradition reminding the couple that life is sometimes difficult and you have to work together to clean it up. The bride kind of half-heartedly motioned to the groom to sweep it up. He did a little bit, then just moved on to talk to his friends, leaving most of the shards strewn around the yard. Additionally, I don't think I saw the couple talk to each other once over the next 3 days of celebrations. It was a gorgeous wedding, and I'm so grateful that I was invited. Really good way to begin living in a new country, but it wasn't surprising to hear that they'd divorced a few years later. He complained she was mean to him throughout their dating life. The day before the wedding, all of the groomsmen and the groom's friends told him not to marry the girl. Like straight up. They lasted less than a year. An ex-friend of mine is in such a relationship, except manipulative and controlling. He is finally starting to see it after 10 years of friends and family calling it out, but he's not strong enough to leave her. He's tried 4 times now and always caves. My boyfriend's brother has an abusive 3-year marriage if they are breathing. They're screaming at each other that the family has been warning him about since before the vows. His mother especially has been vocal about it. He's finally contemplating divorce after she started punching him in the middle of the night for no reason. On average, it takes about 7 tries before victims are able to successfully leave abusive relationships. It took me 4 because he put me in the hospital that last time. It's statistically the most dangerous time for an abuse victim. The abuser will often become more violent, aggressive, angry, possessive, manipulative, controlling, etc. Many abusers will kill their partner when they try to leave. Hope he's finding the support and strength he needs to try again. It can feel impossible. I know firsthand. You feel like you have nothing: energy, money, love, support, most of all choices. You are exhausted and unwell. You feel trapped. Finances are usually intertwined and might even be an area of abuse. If there's manipulation and control, there is most likely emotional and psychological abuse too. It's not an issue of not being strong enough when someone's tried to leave and hasn't been able to yet. Just saying is all. The ex-friend, let's call him Yoni, was so close this last time. Every friend, every family member, even his work 2 managers and all coworkers were encouraging, supportive, and ready to help him out. I loaned Yoni money to get out. His work gave him more hours and offered him a better position. He got himself a new PO box and own apartment. He reconnected with family that she cut him off from. Some of Yoni's coworkers had survived abusive relationships, and we are going to take him to a support group the week he got back together with her. Sadly, she's just that good at manipulating Yoni. She threatened his mother and father after getting him back. He lied to me about going back to her and about paying me back. I'm sure she forced him to quit his job. His blog is gone, and so is his social media, so I know he's under full control again. They have a son too. I fear what she puts in that little boy's head. A month before the wedding, the couple made an appointment with me, the church music director organist, to plan music for the ceremony. Each made suggestions on music he or she would like, but no matter how many pieces were considered and demonstrated, they couldn't agree on anything, and would get into heated arguments over processionals, recessionals, vocal solos, and prelude music, even though they were all good possibilities. The bride and groom simply seemed indifferent to one another's wishes and needs. In the end, based on what I heard each of them most wanting, I offered compromises in an effort to bring about peace selections, which they finally agreed to. They were engaged, but showed no signs of being in love. I just played at a wedding, where it was the opposite. Bride and groom had no idea you usually had music at a wedding. I suggested canon, because the groom's family wanted super slow worship music and the bride was too afraid to speak up. Then last minute her aunt, the bassist's mom, says to play Hallelujah Leonard Cohen, and even though it was instrumental, some of the groom's family straight up leaves. Also, once they found out there was going to be music, the groom's family wanted to be the ones playing and singing, but those kids were super or amateurs and expectedly backed out once they saw the crowd, leading to the groom's family trying to pretend they didn't know there would be a band and trying to get my girlfriend vocalist and my bassist off the stage. The cherry on top is the pastor marrying them went off on a tangent and said because she was a single mother this relationship was doomed, and she damned any future children they'd have, and cursed their relationship because she had sex before marriage. The most beautiful wedding I've been to ended in divorce. Venue was where the groom's father is buried, and he cried as he made his vows to the bride there. Turned out he'd been cheating on her for months and they divorced a while later. Something so repugnant about marrying someone you're cheating on practically over your father's grave. To date, it's the only wedding I've been to that ended in divorce. One of my friends got married. Afterwards she looked at me, crying, and said, "What did I do?" They were separated by the time the plane landed from their honeymoon. He was a good guy. She was a mess. The betta fish and the flower centerpieces lasted longer than the marriage. I worked at a nice restaurant in Nala. Bride is lovely, she is excited and very receptive to our suggestions on things and their budget. Groom is an insufferable know-it-all. Has bargain hunting. Crab cakes don't cost that much, what if I buy them and you serve them? On their big day I'm holding the door as they walk out the first time as husband and wife. With we got married I'm so happy. Not really, we gotta fill out paperwork and file it with the state. I've seen 3-week-old balloons less deflated than that poor woman. I hope she got out of there. Not at the wedding itself, but when my spouse and I went to pick up our marriage license, we encountered a young man shouting at his fiancée outside the building because she had failed to remind him to bring the right IDs. We were like, big yikes. I hope they're doing okay. Reminds me of my ex. He would oversleep and then get mad at me for not waking him up. Mad. Like passive aggressive. Cold shoulder. Ignore me. And give me an attitude. He'd also get mad at me for forgetting to remind him of his own responsibilities. Buddy, I thought you was a grown-ass man, but I was wrong. Wedding photographer here. I can think of a few. Full-blown row during dinner. Had another couple fist fight during a first dance. An infamous one for me was leaving a venue late one night, and as I'm walking to the train I can see the bride down an alley, on her knees with the best man. I was the wedding photographer for a reality TV show. End of the night I'm having a few drinks with the film crew and the groom has come up to me and one of the producers and says I think I've made a big mistake. So we are trying to be reassuring and telling him it's natural to second guess such a big decision, to which he replies, no, I mean I think I'm gay. I had them both on Facebook. The drama the next week was mesmerizing to watch unfold. I've got a ton of these stories. Edit, since you asked. Was working with a video guy who had the bride and groom on radio mix. Sat around waiting for the evening action to kick off, and the video dude called me over and said, listen to this. Groom was talking to one of the bridesmaids about how they had to end their affair now he's married. Not a how could you tell they wouldn't last, but shooting in an old church on the hottest day of the year. Watching the groom wait for the bride and he's swaying back and forth. Next thing he's fainted. Fallen forward and slammed his mouth into a stone step. Smashed his front teeth out. Blood everywhere. Had a bride and groom on a trampoline for photos. Groom's heading downward. Bride's about to go up. He lands on her dress just as she goes up, and she pops out the top of the dress. Boobs flailing around in the air. Shot a traveler wedding which erupted into a massive brawl. Watched a drunk usher knock over a wedding cake. Weddings are amazing. I've been doing this for about 12 years and seen some sights, but I still love shooting them even now. Showed up to the wedding of a friend of my husband's who I knew casually. When we arrived at the church, the groom was very drunk in the parking lot and getting drunker by the minute. I thought it was kinda nuts, since it was a full Catholic ceremony which involved lots of kneeling and standing. I honestly have no idea how he made it thought that, but he did. At the reception, he proceeded to continue the drinking party while his new wife cried in the washroom. When it was time for the first dance, he kind of stumbled around the dance floor despite a year of dance lessons. When it was time for him to take his new wife's garter off and throw it to the bachelors, he instead did a striptease type dance and got himself down to his underwear in front of many elderly family members. People were shocked and talking, and all in all it was a shit show. I gave this marriage a year or two tops. They, however, are still married 25 plus years later. This was my sister's best friend, and it was a bachelorette party moment. Bride had been having an affair. Everyone knew it. The groom's friends tried to tell him, but she convinced him they were making it up. I mean, at that point it was just sad. She actually had the balls to force fiancé to apologize to the guy she was sleeping with for the accusations. The night of the bachelorette party, she actually took all her bridesmaids back to the other guy's house and spent the night with him. He came to their wedding. It was so awkward. Everyone knew and everyone was talking. The groom was told, but chose to overlook it. After the wedding, she insisted the other guy come on vacations with her and her husband and included him in all their social functions. Now, if they're non-monogamous, whatever, go crazy. But her husband was an absolute wreck about it for years and she just kept gaslighting him. No one could convince him to leave her. She told my sister that a fair guy insisted he would never marry her and didn't want kids, so she was using fiancé to get them. They ended up divorcing 2 years later after their second child was born. She immediately moved in with a fair guy and they did end up getting married. When they disappeared for half an hour during the reception, they were both saving themselves for marriage and were desperate to bone down, which is a fine thing to want. But it turns out that was more or less the main reason they got married. They made it almost a year. My high school teacher told me a story of 2 people who waited for marriage too. In Utah, they have a massive porn problem and the husband definitely watched too much. He brought an outfit, a movie, toys, and I swear a whip for their wedding night. The wife burst into tears and locked herself in the bathroom for the entire night. My teacher's lesson was to talk to your partner about everything including sex lol. There was a similar problem on an agony aunt page 1 read once when the wife wrote in for advice. So apparently the bride and groom were both virgins and waited for marriage in accordance with their culture, with the groom clearly spending all that time on Pornhub getting wild expectations. The shy, religious bride expected that their wedding night would be a sacred coming together of souls, but the groom did not read the memo. He slapped her around, tried to do anal, and asked to piss on her on their wedding night. The bride was, obviously, absolutely horrified and kept making excuses not to have sex with him again. He said he had a wonderful time and kept asking when they could have round 2. She wrote into the agony aunt wondering what kind of deviant she had married. I felt very sorry for her. Portuguese wedding. Fist fight broke out at the head table during the reception between 2 groomsmen. They were arguing about which of them had slept with the bride first. Groom was oblivious. He came home from work early one day 2 years later and caught her in bed with another man. Surprised it took that long. Midnight buffet was amazing though. I was the maid of honor. They seemed like the perfect couple, together for nearly 10 years, and had this big, expensive, beautiful wedding. Bride would have been happy with a small event, but told me groom had a big family and had insisted. Alarm bells hit when I sat with her parents in the front row and realized the groom to bride ratio was so massively off. The groom had 3 best men, as well as ushers etc. His sister and one best man read something during the ceremony and then all 3 said long speeches about him at dinner. It was all about him. The photographer was even his friend's mum, so she kept whisking away the boys for these hilarious slad shoots. The bride was ignored most of the day, and in the evening he got too drunk, spilt a drink over her wedding gown, and danced with his friends. It felt more like a big birthday party than a joint event. I'd never seen that side to him, but I felt so sorry for my friend. It was like she was just there to be a prop to his plans and look good. 3 months after the wedding he began being emotionally abusive. A month after that he admitted he'd been having an affair for years, then left. If I hadn't seen the way he behaved at the wedding, I never would have guessed he had that in him. Editors, so many people are being kind. I'll update you. My friend hasn't been able to trust or date again yet, and it's been 4 years. However, she has become an amazingly brave woman who's traveled to some amazing places alone and is now retraining to change careers. I think she learned never to be a backseat passenger in a relationship again. Honestly, the way she handled the whole thing with such grace and determination makes me so proud to be her friend. She basically told him when he left that he would never see her or hear from her or about her again. She dropped all friends that had a connection with him after he left and made sure he would always live his life wondering if he made the right decision and what she was up to. I really hope his dying thought is about her, and I know for a fact hers won't be about him. She'll find real love. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.